Hi, I'm Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. This is your weekly check-in for all things motivation, education, and inspiration on your path to success with myopia management. In this episode, we're going to be continuing the Road to Vision by Design 2025 series, where I'm going to be highlighting some of the more noteworthy speakers and sessions that you'll be able to attend at the conference. AAOMC.org is how you find out more information about the event. And I have a couple of awesome optometrists, myopia management specialists, exceptional orthokeratologists on this episode, and I cannot wait to get started. So I'm going to first introduce Dr. Leah Johnson. She's a leading expert in myopia management and specialty contact lenses. She's trained hundreds of doctors worldwide, held key roles at Paragon Vision Sciences and Cooper Vision. She teaches at the University of Houston. She's a published author and one of Vision Monday's rising stars. Dr. Johnson brings a deep expertise and passion for her patient care at her practice, Innovative Eye Care. Leah, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, and I've also got Dr. Sheila Morrison on with us. She's a private practice optometrist and internationally recognized educator. She is a past clinical professor at the University Houston College of Optometry and currently practices at Mission Eye Care, where she co-supervises their cornea and contact lens residency program. She is an adjunct faculty at NSU Oklahoma College of Optometry. She lectures and publishes internationally on myopia management, specialty contact lenses, and dry eye, and collaborates on research with the University of Waterloo. Sheila, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure. I'm trying to remember the last time we got a chance to sit down and chat about anything.
Right. And I'm excited for this episode because the session, the workshop that y'all are doing at Vision by Design, when I saw it on the agenda, I was like, I got to have the two of you on to talk about it because I think it's an absolute must attend. But before we get started, let's do some housekeeping. We'll start with Leah. If anybody has any questions about anything we're talking about and they want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, so they can either email me. I can send it to you in the chat, my specific email, but it's basically Dr. Leah, Leah, at innovativeye.care. That's my email, and I'm happy to answer any questions either by email or in person at Vision by Design.
Perfect. And Sheila?
And likewise, email is drm@missioneyecare.ca. And we'd love to have you come and ask us questions at VBD. That's the best place. Leah and I will both actually be hitting a lot of conferences. We were just talking about this, how busy this season really is this year with the dates of all the conferences coming up in October. So between VBD, Academy, there's a couple others that we'll be at. Please find us because we'd love to chat more, all things myopia.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Leah.
No, I was just going to say it's true. Our passion is myopia, and we love to talk at all times, all things myopia.
Yeah, and they are perfect examples of what this community has to offer you. If you're just starting out or if you found a little bit of success with myopia management, introduce yourself to Dr. Morrison and Dr. Johnson, because just like everybody else in our community, they love to talk about this stuff and love to help out in any way that they can. Housekeeping on my part, don't forget to like and subscribe, 5-star review, all of the things. If you absolutely love myopia management as much as we do, you can support the podcast by going to myopiamindset.com. Okay, so let's talk about, first, I want to get an overview for each of you on how you got into myopia management, what your practice looks like, and then I want to very quickly go into the workshop at Vision by Design. So we'll start with Leah. Tell us how you got into myopia management and tell us a little bit about your practice.
Yeah, so I got into myopia management by working for Paragon Vision Sciences. So 8 years ago, I did even longer than that, I did a cornea and contact lens fellowship and specialized in kind of specialty lenses, scleral lenses, more custom contact lenses. And part of that was, I remember during my fellowship year, I went to Vision by Design. It was in Houston, where I'm from. So it was a nice, easy transition to just go down the street, go to Vision by Design. I went to boot camp, learned all about orthokeratology. Fast forward a few years, I started working for Paragon Vision Sciences. And I also, as part of being their optometrist on board for Paragon, I managed their consultation team. So I had to become very much up to speed on the fitting aspects of fitting Ortho-K and Paragon CRT. And so I managed and was in that role for several years up until transitioning to Cooper Vision and being part of their myopia management team. But at this time, I also just developed a passion for fitting patients in Ortho-K. And so about 2 years ago, I started my own orthokeratology practice here in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. I sublease from another specialty contact lens doctor, and I do all the Ortho-K fittings in her practice. And so from that kind of, and I know we're going to talk about it today, spurred on. I was telling Dr. Sheila, I was like, hey, there is a lot more to having an Ortho-K practice than just the fitting aspect. And I had the fitting aspect down. I, managed the consultants who would give fitting expertise and advice to practitioners. And that's when we, and I'll let Sheila chime in and share her background of how she gets started. But that's kind of how our paths started converging and led us to this point where now we wanted to offer a CE course on helping other practitioners.
Awesome. Yeah. Sheila, tell us about it.
And I love that. Actually, it's kind of a fun serendipitous-ish story. I actually met Leah through the University of Houston. And that's because one of the first ways that I kind of started to drink the Kool-Aid, well, my residency director, y'all probably know Pat Caroline, Mark Andre, and then Matt Lampa and Beth Kenoshita over at Pacific. They were really heavy in myopia when I was doing my residency. And so I kind of did a little bit there, did some work with Ortho-K studies and things like that, but it wasn't, it was one of many things that overwhelm you as a resident, truthfully. Then when I got to Houston, really, wow, I was on faculty for a couple of years there and just surrounded by the greats. I mean, I was working under, Earl Smith was the dean at the time, Catherine Richdale was there, we had Dave Bernstein, all these researchers. And in such a huge monster university, there's all these different departments putting together the science. And my role at the school at the time was in the clinic as directing the contact lens clinic, but also integrating the myopia program from research to clinic, and trying to help to consolidate the program into something that made a lot more sense to teach students and offer kind of the best kind of one-stop shop for patients. And so it's really cool to be part of that process of creating the workflow in the clinic and seeing how the researchers would influence what we did in the clinic. And there's sometimes things that you butt heads, you guys, that always what science says doesn't always instantly go into the clinic. We have to kind of alter things to make it profitable and make the time work. You can't do every test that's done in a research lab on a patient every time. So organizing that was really cool. And then I ended up having my daughter in Texas and hightailing back to Canada because our family wanted us back. And we were so grateful to step into an opportunity at Mission Eye Care. So I joined the practice I'm at now. And there I introduced some of the things in the United States that I saw at the university. And we created what's called the Myopia Academy at our practice. And that has really been kind of a passion project over the last couple of years. Well, last almost 10 years now, Leah, to your point. And, it's really fuels my personal passion for essentially doing better for children. The choices we make today really affect their lives tomorrow, and that's our future generation. And so things that we can do to really better their lives now as providers, it's our responsibility. So that's where kind of my drive comes from for the myopia clinic. And I couldn't agree more, Leah. I mean, it's one thing to know how to fit an Ortho-K lens, or it's one thing to know how to put the science together in the clinic, but then there's that whole side that we're going to talk a lot about in this course. It's like the PITAs, right? The pain in the butt, we'll say, things that create a lot of stress for practitioners in the clinic. And that's where we really want to use our skills and experience to kind of help to, share and also learn from people that join us. That's the cool thing about MAC courses. I don't know if anyone out there has heard about them. I'm kind of new to the MAC courses at VBD, and it's a really cool format. Leah and I will be doing more of an interactive, smaller group session that allows for a lot more direct kind of coaching, conversations, and a lot of like Q&A with instant feedback.
Yeah. And those sessions are extremely valuable because you get so much personal interaction and attention in the workshop. I think it's the perfect way to learn. It has almost like a user group kind of feel to it. Or Leah.
Oh, no. And I was just going to say, and the other aspect that I love on partnering with Sheila on this is I kind of started my Ortho-K practice as a cold start, no patients, no staff, right? And so that, and Sheila has a practitioner office, multiple modalities, selling optical, lots of staff members. And so I think that just gives great perspectives on different practices and how to integrate Ortho-K and implement myopia management into a practice versus small doctor of one versus Sheila's practice, which, is a lot busier and a lot more all encompassing of different specialties and how to work with the staff members on that too.
Reminds me of kind of like the Prince and the Pauper story, Leah, the whole thing of like all the tech, all the stuff, have all the staff. And then there's, my little one-man show, but they're both absolutely correct. Like you get there, you don't need a big practice. You can do it on your own, as you have been a perfect example. I'm so proud of all the stuff you're doing, by the way. It's just going to be just exciting to see. It's not going to be long before you will need all these staff members to support as you grow. But the cool thing about the topics that we'll touch on, it helps every doctor in every modality of practice, whether that's a big practice, small practice. And Leah and I will come from opposing or, hopefully by the end, conjoining sides to really help to share the same messages.
Yeah, I love it. What a great, perspective that each one of you can bring given your practice situations. The course is called Orthokeratology: Conquering the Practice Management Pains. And I think it's the perfect workshop to have. You've got so many docs who learn how to do myopia management and Ortho-K. They get back to their practice, they're fired up, they start implementing myopia management, and then they start hitting these roadblocks or these obstacles or these speed bumps. And then it's like, well, now what do I do? So I imagine that your workshop is going to be covering a lot of that from your personal experience. Leah, like, how does this tie into, your experience? And tell us a little bit more about what the practice management pains are.
Yeah, so I think in our course, we've broken it up into a couple of different categories with managing, it's all about managing expectations and prevention, and it becomes a pain if you don't think about it and prepare for it and set those expectations in the very beginning. And so we kind of have some clinical things that you don't always think about, behavioral or emotional, and also just within the staff and with your practice and, and with contracts and, just really, again, just kind of focusing on, hey, these are all the little things that you probably didn't think about because you're fired up and you're like, I'm ready to fit this patient. Let's fit them. Let's go. Right. And then as you start to see more patients, you start to have these one-offs, right? But one off this and one off that. And it's like, oh, this is now becoming a roadblock, or this is becoming a pain. This is an issue for my staff. And so slowly, sometimes practitioners tell me, oh, it's not really worth doing Ortho-K, or I have no interest in doing it because there's just so many other aspects to this. And so, yeah, we wanted to be able to address those aspects and what we found through trial and error. I will tell you, I was telling Sheila, I'm like, oh my gosh, this happened. And I didn't even think about
that a lot. There's not one, I would argue, it's like a weekly vent of and this is why this course is so fun for us, is we have hit the pains and we have been in pain, a lot of pain. And so our goal is to really try to share so proactively others don't go through every single pain point that we have. And yeah, Leah and I, we talk about these things. She'll text me about, oh man, there's this parent that was just, I couldn't handle, or they wouldn't listen to what I was asking them to do, or this or that. Or then there's me, oh my gosh, how many times do I have to say, this is a warranty period, and yet they still come back 7 months later outside of warranty, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so really just mitigating those kind of issues that come up for sure.
Lost lenses. Like we're like, hey, you need to understand your manufacturing, your manufacturer, because if you don't, you can run up your own bill of the cost of lenses, which then makes it less profitable, or even now you're not profitable. And so then when doctors see that, they're like, I don't want to offer Ortho-K, right? And we're like, no, you just, let's set this all up front. And even telling Sheila, like, hey, what would I do differently 2 years ago that I have now learned? Or what are the things that I incorporate now that I have learned over the 2 years that have come to bite me in the butt, because I didn't address things initially? And what kind of advice can we give for practitioners because even if you're very excited and gung-ho about starting Ortho-K and you're like, I'm ready to do that, right? These pains can kind of whittle it away slowly, where then you kind of forget that initial excitement or what magical experience you can bring to that patient and change their lives because of all these small practice management issues that weren't taken care of.
All the pain points.
Yeah.
Matt, may we give you a little teaser on the key pain points? So we have broken down this course into, as Leah mentioned, there's different categories of our pain points. And generally there are 4 main categories that we feel would be very useful in this course for those to kind of tune in with us. So number 1, we have clinical pain points. So this includes, our blepharitis, allergies, just things like that. Point number 2, behavioral. So this is where we're looking in the course at things like compliance, expectations, etc. Operational is huge, you guys. This is the one where we look really carefully at our scheduling chaos, pricing for unplanned scenarios, things like that. And then finally, there's the emotional pain. And this comes from staff being stressed about certain scenarios, patients being upset about things. And so those are kind of the pains that we feel that we'll go through in this course.
I love
without
it.
giving it away too much.
Yeah. I definitely want to just do a preview. So I stop me if I go too far. Cause
no, we loved
just everything we got
so much to talk about. You could dig in for an hour and we'd still have new things of pain points. And that's why it's such a fun course for us. It's really hashed out. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you definitely got me, very, very interested. There's so many, I've been just scribbling things down to ask you about. One thing I noticed when I was a clinical sales consultant with Johnson and Johnson, I noticed that a lot of docs who were attempting to do Ortho-K just did not have a good structure in place. And I think this workshop speaks exactly to that. I'm going to give you an example. I went to an account where I assumed, because I grew up in an Ortho-K pioneer practice, I assumed they would have a contract in place and that they would have gone over all of this information with the patient, but they didn't. The patient was being charged for the lenses, and then any adjustments that needed to take place were just an added on thing that they didn't even really discuss with the patients. And I was flabbergasted at
how did the patient handle that? What happened to these people? I can only imagine.
The patient did not want to continue Ortho-K treatment because they felt like they were being nickeled and dimed, right?
Totally.
So speak to that if you can. Whichever one of you wants to go first, let's just keep it conversational. Speak to that particular aspect from the workshop.
Oh, people will walk, not only quit Ortho-K, but also go and negatively Google review your practice if they feel like it's unclear with pricing. And so, just as a little teaser, certainly, it is so important to get infrastructure in place where that communication is clear, including not only verbally, but it's got to be in writing, we've found, because there's a lot of information that gets thrown at a patient in an Ortho-K fit, any medical treatment for that matter. And while everybody does their best to listen and do the very best to follow instructions, it's not always that seamless. And so we find that, written, documentation, not for just to get the information across, protects both parties from miscommunication in the end when there are fees. And we make people sign once a year to renew those consents because, next thing you know, we have somebody who's surprised at the price of something. And then that creates a lot of awkwardness and, perhaps that negative experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of adding on that, I think at both of our practices, and it's pretty common. I know that there was a study the focus study looking at, just general orthokeratology in the U.S., having an all-inclusive pricing, at least for that first year. And then, but having a written contract, that's been one of my pain points. It's happened to me where I did have a written contract. We have an annual renewal fee. So after the first year of all-inclusive pricing for the program, we go into an annual renewal for the second year for a child. And the mom forgot about that she had signed this contract, and I had scanned it into their file. And so then when it came time and they came in for their appointment, she was quite surprised that there was a fee because they had just been coming in for all their follow-ups. And so she just assumed or didn't think about that there was an annual renewal fee, which it was still a hefty, it was still a price that wasn't like free. And so she was quite surprised.
Imagine that, non-free services.
Yeah. And I was like, well, this is in the second year and you signed the contract, and I printed it out and was like, we did sign over this and go through it. And Sheila, that's when I realized, and she helped make me a better person. Now, before they come in for that, at the 9-month follow-up, I tell them, don't forget, when you come in in 3 months, there will be an annual renewal fee. I know you've been coming and you haven't had to pay anything, but at this one, and that's going to cover the second year or the third year of seeing your patient, seeing your child. And so again, that was a little awkward hiccup that we had, that I experienced, and but that patient made my practice better. And so I want to share that, with the practitioners who come and join us for our MAT class. It's just these little things that now I email it to them beforehand. So when they come in, they're ready to, again, re-sign and move forward for that second year.
Guys, this isn't even in the course, but I want to sheepishly share another pain point from the other perspective that I've learned through this topic specifically, is also on the doctor side, we create pain. Or we can, and you do this totally innocently. Here's a scenario. This happened last week. We had a doctor's meeting. We talked about it. My staff don't like it when I do this. You get a patient in, they're not actually set for myopia control. They're not set for Ortho-K fit. They book themselves as an eye exam. Turns out all they really need is Ortho-K. So you do your best, fit them on the spot. Want to close the deal, get them, their butt in the chair, get them committed to coming back for their Ortho-K. I mean, I can do it in the time that I have, no problem. And don't ever get them to sign consent forms on the way out because they didn't have a proper introduction to the clinic. The staff did not give their little spiel to them ahead of time to talk about pricing. I send them on their way with this charge. And, sometimes if I talk to them about it, they're fine with the money itself, but you bet that half the time if I do that, I'm not getting a consent form signed. Some of those details are missed by me in the exam room because I'm off to the next patient. Staff hate when you do that. It creates a lot of stress for the front desk and for the staff when patients are not clear and have proper consent forms signed. So what we do on average now is my new fresh leaf chapter that I'm going to attempt is, you can't do it all. Sometimes you have to bring people back and schedule them for a time that then they can have the proper infrastructure. So it's, not black and white. I will never promise that I'll never do that ever again. But, on average, just remembering to get those important administrative tasks done is just a great way to avoid the pain on both sides.
Yeah.
On all three sides, actually: patient pain, staff pain, and then my pain, doctor pain. Pains me. I don't want to let people down or make people mad. I want everybody to have a good time,
I think that's a great point. Docs don't want to let people down. That's one of the fundamental, core aspects of a myopia management doc is they care for the patient. They want to they see a problem, want to make the change, and then have to go through what ultimately is a rigmarole. Like when you do myopia management, you have to constantly be adapting and changing your systems, which is what the two of you are definitely speaking about. And when it comes to, I want to talk about scheduling specifically, because I think you brought up a great point about, you only have this block of time. For most starting out, they only have this block of time and they put all of this pressure on themselves to make the most of that time period. And what they don't know is they don't have to do it all in that block. What kind of scheduling, aspects are you talking about in the course? Can you share some of that?
In terms of scheduling, I mean, I'm pretty clear in our contract of what follow-ups are, what follow-ups are entailed. I do tell them we may need to change lenses, a few, maybe have one or two lens changes, so that they are prepared for that. Ortho-K is not your standard soft contact lens fitting where you see someone 1 week and maybe, and because we're doing myopia management in kids, we want to see them at more frequent intervals. And so just trying to be upfront with the parents that, hey, this is going to require more of your time. So if you are very busy parent and you don't have time or you don't want to come in for these follow-ups and this isn't conducive to your lifestyle, this may not be the right treatment option for you. And so, and again, just being very upfront. Honestly, I have learned almost, and not in a bad way, because I get parents, they come to me and they want to do Ortho-K, but I'm like, this is not easy breezy,
Not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah, and these are all the follow-ups that are going to be included, and this is what it's going to be, and we may deal with this issue or this issue. Are you sure? Do you still want to continue? And I'll tell you, like 90% of parents are like, yes, I still want to do this. I want to do this either for myself, for adults, or for children. But I have just learned to be very upfront on expectations and letting them know what they're getting into versus I didn't realize I was having to come back for all, these multiple visits.
I love that. That is like one key, just don't sweep things under the carpet. It's like life. I just want to be told what the reality is. I don't want to have these lame surprises later. And I couldn't agree more, Leah, in that when it comes to safety, when it comes to risks with any procedure, when it comes to time commitments, financial commitments, laying it all out is actually one of the number one ways that you're going to more likely to have success in the end. Kind of putting those uncomfortable conversations a little bit to the side. What is the saying? Like eat the frog first or something like that? And if you just get it out there.
The Canadian phrase, Matt.
Something, or I just made it up. I'm not sure, but
I love it. Either way,
get it done. Like do it, and then that is out of the way, and everybody understands and is on the same page, and there's no uncomfortable conversations later or miscommunications. So yeah, I love that point you just brought up. It's absolutely essential. I think also when it comes to the next part of scheduling as well. So Leah has now just discussed a little bit about sort of those expectation setting, what's the time commitment. The other next level that we take it to in the course is the logistics of how do we physically put people on the schedule and what is actually needed. So, and we compare in the course a solo office compared to an office where we're managing all these schedules, not just say my schedule with my one tech. I'm also having to mitigate the technicians. Oh, thumbs up. Can you see that on yours?
Yes.
Oh, that is so cool.
Ooh, I hope that shows up in the actual recording.
It will.
But it also the scheduling needs to take into account what are all the other doctors doing? How much time is needed on the tech side for training? What is needed for counseling? And so that is another infrastructure topic of pain that is not painful if you understand a really effective workflow.
Here's this demographic that I think the two of you will be able to help the most. Is that this demographic is the doctor who's maybe an associate at another practice and wants to bring in a myopia management element, but obviously their hands are tied in so many different circumstances. Can we give a few pearls on how they can really work with all of these restrictions to make it more efficient? Because obviously they have to prove to the owner or the other doctors that they're have the practice with it, this is profitable, but they don't have the kind of freedom that a private practice or a doctor who's been more established in a practice has. So how do we help this demographic who's like, I only have a certain amount of time to see a patient, I only work these kind of hours, and I'm working on a very limited budget, so maybe they can't do axial length just yet?
I would say first thing that comes to mind to your point about equipment is it might not be possible to have it all, and that's okay. So to start off with, specifically for Ortho-K, I would encourage if somebody new to it that's trying to prove there's a very strong case to have a topographer. So I'd focus on that, and you can actually create a business model around that, showing other uses of it as well and the value. including, if there's a fee for it, how many patients they'd have to see. But I wouldn't expect yourself to have it all at once. Axial length is, as you know, the standard. We know that this is something that is very useful with Ortho-K, but if you have to kind of pick and choose, it's okay to start small. And you don't need all the equipment all at once.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Sheila. When I started my Ortho-K practice 2 years ago, the Dr. Morrison had a pentacam, which is nice. It's a topographer.
Very nice.
Shows you the shape of the, post Ortho-K. But I didn't have biometer and measuring axial length. And after seeing a few patients from that, I was able to save up the money and, make a payment for another piece of equipment. So I think it's just building upon things slowly. But for those associates who don't always, because I remember I used to also be in that position. I worked at a practice in Houston, and we brought in specialty lenses, and it wasn't like we always had all the equipment that we needed. But it's like work with what you've got. And once you have a few patients under your belt, then you get to make that case of having an upgrade and, making things a lot better. And I think it's just get started. Yeah, get started with what you have. Don't wait. Things don't always have to be perfect clinic, perfect scenario, right? To be able to start.
In fact, it's probably never going to be perfect.
Exactly.
Just to put that out there.
And you just get to refine and make a case with the practice owner of, okay, this is what I've done. This is what I brought to the practice. I would love to make this experience, better for me as the practitioner, the staff, the patient. Can we introduce, something else?
Yeah.
And one final pearl on that note for new associates, just because you're new or you're just trying to prove yourself, charge for your services. You don't have to undercharge just because you're learning. Find out the market value, what's fair in your name. Find out what other people are charging if you're trying to create, present, a business model to somebody that you're working with or the owner of the practice or however you're doing it. And do not undercharge for your services and expertise or for products. That's the number one, especially, building in with your fee for what you charge for lenses when you're just starting off. Don't forget about building in any cost for warranty changes. If the lab you're using charges for changes, you build that in and increase your price enough that it actually covers everything so that at the end of the day, after a couple of fits, you can say, hey, we profited of this much off of this fit, not we just broke even or lost a little bit of money.
Yeah. So, what I had to do, because I came up with my prices, honestly, I did not look around or ask anyone what they were charging or anything. I just said, all right, worst case scenario, how many times am I going to see this patient? Best case scenario, 6 visits in the year with their follow-up visits. Worst case scenario, probably 10. So let me come on an average of 8. What is my chair time worth for, seeing an office visit for this patient? And so I kind of multiplied that because, every office visit times 8, because my first year I did want it to be all inclusive. I don't want to nickel and dime anyone. And then I started looking at contact lenses and their manufacturing policies, who replaces broken, lost lenses, who doesn't. What does the cost of a warranty? What does shipping cost? Do they ship directly to patient? All of these things. And so I really did create a spreadsheet. I think I shared it with you, Sheila.
I've seen your spreadsheets before. They're usually very organized, very well organized. And
I wanted to document, what's my warranty? Some companies are 90, some are 120. What if I order a spare pair? Do I include a spare pair in this? Because, some companies don't offer that, other companies do. And so I kind of just took all these numbers and crunched them together. And then I realized at first I only had one tiered pricing. And I don't think there's one right or wrong way to do this, because in my field, I do get to talk to so many practitioners and hear what they're doing. I actually have 2-tiered pricing. I have, standard Ortho-K lenses, standard kind of warranty, and then there are more specialty complex Ortho-K lenses. They cost more. The fitting is more complex. I would use them for more complex cases. And so to make it worth it for me, and only because I learned, and I remember one of my patients told me, she goes, "Oh my, you're probably losing money on me with the office visits and everything." And I was like, it's fine. I'm learning. This is always an opportunity, right? For every challenge is a learning opportunity. And so yeah, that was just good for me. And I've had some practitioners tell me, "Oh, it evens out. I charge one price for all." But then on the other hand, I think, well, if you're a standard fitting, I want to also do right by the patient and give them maybe a lower standard price than the super complex patient, where I tell them it is higher because you are more complex. And they usually understand that too. So yeah, that's kind of how I came up with my pricing. And as Sheila mentioned, knowing what you're worth, knowing what your chair time is worth, giving the best service. It's almost, for me, because I am a solo practitioner, it's concierge care. I'm very responsive to my patients, even after hours. May not be sustainable for larger practices and for other, other modalities, but it works for me. And I am very connected to my patients because of that.
Yeah, love it. I love everything that you guys have said. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. The course, again, is called Orthokeratology: Conquering the Practice Management Pains. It's happening at 3:00 on Wednesday, October 22nd. AAOMC.org is how you find out more information and register. And this is the perfect workshop because you can learn everything to start out. If you're brand new, you are going to start running into these kinds of issues. And Sheila and Leah are going to walk you through it. They are going to empower you and coach you and help you work through these practice management pains. Do not try to reinvent the wheel. They learn from their experience, their passion, and their drive to help you overcome these obstacles for sure. So once again, contact information. We'll start with Sheila. If anybody has any questions for you about anything we've talked about in this episode, how can they get in touch with you?
Dr. M at missioneyecare.ca. So DRM at missioneyecare.ca.
Perfect. And Leah?
Dr. Leah, DRLEAH at innovativeye.care.
Awesome. And for my part, if you're enjoying this episode, there's actually more waiting for you. We release extended versions of every episode that we do, and we have exclusive content just for our paid supporters, monthly bonus content that you won't find anywhere else. And if that sounds like something that you would be into, it's just $12 a month, which I say is the price of a cup of coffee each and every week. And if you would buy me a cup of coffee to talk about Ortho-K and myopia management and have on amazing guests like Sheila and Leah, then please consider supporting the podcast. You can do so on our Substack or at myopiamindset.com. Go to Vision by Design. We will definitely be there. For everybody else, we will see you at the next one.